Welcome, everybody, to Pizza Industry Convos, part of the Pizza Club Network. I'm Michael Fox, your host from Pizza Club and the Beach. I am joined today by a very special guest from PMQ Magazine, Charlie Pogacar. Charlie, welcome to Pizza Club. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Michael. It's fun being here with you.
I'm super excited to talk to you and all the things going on in your world. I just for background on Charlie, for those who don't know, PMQ Magazine, or if they've been living under a rock at the pizza world, PMQ covers a lot of amazing business of pizza. And Charlie is the senior editor over there and has been covering stuff for, I think, about the last 2 years now with the magazine, everything from local pizzerias to pizza automation, right? And everything in between. So Charlie, for those who don't really know you and your background, just give us a little bit of sense of where you came from and how you got into pizza in the pizza world.
Yeah, sure. So grew up in Vermont. I went to college in the Hudson Valley. I didn't really. Both my parents were teachers. I thought maybe I'd be a teacher. I felt fated to be a teacher, to be honest with you. And at some point during college, I realized that I could write my senior thesis about baseball history if I majored in history. So I did my entire undergraduate thesis on the spitball, which is like a banned pitch in Major League Baseball. It was banned in 1920. So it was it was like a whole thing. Thought I wanted to be a sports writer. So I graduated in 2010, that like beautiful time when it was like the midst of the recession. And I don't know if a Bard College history degree would have got me much more during other economic times, but I worked in restaurants. I actually managed a restaurant, not a pizzeria, but and like the whole time, like my side hustle was just like blogging about sports basically. And then actually my mother got sick with cancer, and that was a whole thing. And I was living in the Bay Area, and I moved home to Vermont, and she passed. And at that point I started writing like about her, and it like expanded like what I was comfortable writing about. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it was basically just memoir stuff. Then I met a lady who was moving to North Carolina. This is literally 10 years ago. She was getting a PhD at Chapel Hill, and I moved down with her. I got a job at a newspaper. I thought I did not think that was going to happen, and it did. And I was so lucky that it did. And I was covering local sports. I was doing like city council meetings in this little town called Mebane, North Carolina. It's hardly little now. It's like 20,000 people, but that is actually where my wife grew up, who's a different woman than the woman I moved down with. We broke up, and then I was still with the newspapers. I did like stuff on the marketing side for a little bit because I was really burnt out. Being an editor of a weekly newspaper is extremely challenging for those who don't know. It was just like the deadlines of it, the print of it, it was hard. And so then at that point, I found a job with QSR and FSR magazines, covering the restaurant industry. I was actually writing branded content. I was kind of a sicko, and then I actually liked that. I don't think many journalists do. I just loved like the project management aspects of it and things. It made me a lot more organized and stuff. And then we got bought by WTWH Media out of Cleveland. WH bought PMQ from Steve and Linda Green, who I'm sure a lot of people in the industry know. Really good people. I don't know them very well because they were exiting and I was sort of entering. Rick Heinem's the editor-in-chief. I think he has been, it's over 10 years, but I don't know exactly how long. He's amazing. He lives in Oxford, Mississippi, or right outside. And he's just been like, from day one, the most welcoming, awesome boss. And then I've spent the last 2 years just getting to know the pizza industry. That may have been way too much information, Michael, but
No, that's great.
that's me in
I
a
love it.
nutshell, basically.
No, really cool, interesting story and a lot of turns. And speaking of pizza, what's your favorite kind of pizza? Let's talk about that to get a little personal.
So I think we all have like that pizza we grew up eating and we like remember. So I grew up in a little town called Thetford, Vermont. It's like 2,500 people or something. There was one restaurant in the whole town. It was a pizzeria, and it was owned by a Greek family. I never thought anything of it. It was like, and in fact, you probably could have talked me into pizza is like made by Greeks, because that's all I knew. And there were these other little towns that had Greek immigrants who owned pizzerias. And it was like, it's this unbelievable style. It's called New England Greek pizza. It's very greasy. It's like really hard on the stomach, but it's unbelievably good. Sort of, it's like almost like a focaccia. It's based on focaccia, sort of. And there's a whole backstory about how that came to be. I won't bore people with that, but you can look it up. It's very interesting. So I wouldn't say that's my favorite style of pizza, but like when I see it and there's a Greek style pizzeria in Burlington, North Carolina, where I now live. It definitely brings me back. But I've, since coming to PMQ, I learned Bruce Irving had a post about like a pizzeria. He's like, it's a New England Greek style. And I was like, what? And like all these things came whooshing back to me. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like I never even thought of that. And so many moments learning about pizza styles at PMQ, which has been really, really fun. I truly love them all. I think Detroit, like at this point, is probably my favorite. I just like that crunchiness is just unreal. And I haven't had it nearly enough. We don't really have a good go-to Detroit pizza place in North Carolina yet, which I'm like, somebody needs to do it. They'd make so much money. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue to talk about trends because
Yeah.
I feel like, there's a lot of like pizza styles that have kind of come through. And I know, given your vantage point, talking to pizzeria shop owners and sort of seeing the trends of like people are trying and doing, what are some of the things that you're seeing out there that are interesting in terms of pizza styles or things on menus that really got your attention?
Yeah. So man, so many different directions we could go with that. I think neo-Neapolitan, it almost feels like there's like this new category of like people don't really know what to call it, but we all like know it when we see it. And I think it is neo-Neapolitan, where all these, especially like the pandemic driven like pop-up artists who are opening pizzerias all over the place. I think most of them are doing that, where it's like a little stiffer than a true Neapolitan, a little more crunchy. It's the
Wood fired.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there's so much to like about it, and it makes sense that everybody loves it. And then, the other one, and I brought this up the other night. I'm probably going to repeat myself a lot from our pizza club session the other night. So I'll just say that I think Roman style really, really has a lot of momentum. One of the things I like about Roman style is I don't like eating pizza for lunch, which I know sounds crazy. I like a salad or something light, but like I'll eat Roman style for lunch, and I think other people will too. And I think it kind of breaks through day parts where it's like, hell, I'd eat it for breakfast. You know what I mean? Like it's just a really nice style, and you're seeing people bring that. I've interviewed a dude in small town South Carolina who was bringing Roman style there. An interesting note about that actually is I'm gonna forget the name of the pizzeria. Yeah, it's a gentleman outside of Myrtle Beach. His name is Anthony. It's gonna kill me, but anyway, he was gonna bring Roman style to this small South Carolina town, and he was like, you know what? People are clamoring for like, what is Roman style? Like, we don't even know what that is before he opened. So with 2 weeks before opening, he was like, shit, I'm going to offer some New York style pies too. And so he does, and he's been massively successful. And he says he sells like 20 to 25% Roman style and the rest is New York. But I think that was brilliant because it's bringing people into, it's like, hey, here's something approachable. Do you want to try Roman style? Just see if you like it. And a lot of people do because there's a lot to like about it.
It's sort of like a way to sample it and bring it to an audience that maybe is already interested in what you're doing, right? It's like a new offering or new product line, I guess is kind of how a lot of people, is that
Totally.
what, I wonder if that's working for people.
100%. And I think anyone who does menu development would tell you that, you have to have something that's approachable for people for them to then like take the next step, especially, if you're in a small town. I think that it's really important to like know who your client base is. Don't tell them what they should like. Give them something they do like, sell them what they want. Yeah. And also I'm name checking this pizzeria because it's Anto's Roman Pizzeria and Italian Market. Okay. In Conway, South Carolina. Anyway, sorry.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I think Roma's a great example. I mean, I'm curious to see sort of how that gets integrated, but what you're suggesting is sort of like an offering on a menu is to expand rather than maybe opening just a strictly Roman concept, which I guess people are doing that as well. And people have had success, but it's harder to kind of introduce a completely new format. Do you find that the case? Like,
that's the best example I can think of, but I will say that I was interviewing Nicole Bean of Pizarro's Pizza in Houston yesterday for the podcast. Yes. That I don't know if that will come out before or after this comes out, but look out for that because she's great. She's a powerhouse, and they do 3 different styles of pizza. And she believes the first, and I have nothing to disprove this, I'm sure it's true, the first pizzeria to offer Detroit style in like the mid 2010s in Houston. I think, they also had experience, like they were cooking Neapolitan style before anybody else was. And part of that, she said, was guest education, where they literally put on the wall, like, it's not wet, it's moist, things like that. I don't know if that's exactly what they put on the wall, but it was like, here's an introduction, a crash course into Neapolitan pizza, because the average person in Houston hadn't had it, and it didn't mean they weren't going to like it. It just meant that you had to provide them with a little background so that they
Education,
knew.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. Speaking of pizzas and ingredients, any interesting ingredient toppings, combinations, or cool things that are passing your radar? You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And do you get to go out and try a lot of these things? Because I know for me, I'm in the New York area, so we have a lot of access to pizza. But I wonder, you're covering the whole country too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, like literally the number one question. So if I'm out, I play a lot of golf, and in golf you come across a lot of strangers, and you're kind of making small talk, and they're like, "What do you do?" And I'm, I'm always like, "Well, I write for a pizza magazine." And they're like, "A pizza magazine? Like, what are you talking about?" And the next question almost always without fail is like, "So do you get to eat a lot of free pizza?" And I'm like, "No." And it sucks. It totally sucks. Like I've been in New York once since I started doing the PMQ thing. I was like in and out in a day, and I only got to hit up like one spot. I don't even remember where it was. And that was like really early on in PMQ. I'd been working there for like a month. But anyway, so it
We got
stinks.
to
Like,
get you back about that. We got to
no, I
change
wish I
that.
was out more. I did do a San Francisco trip. I had a
Okay.
Flower Water Tony's Pizza, like a
Yep.
lot of different Square Pie guys, which is unbelievable. Shout out Mark Schechter and his team.
Yes.
And so that's been really fun. But so trending ingredients, another interview I just did was Mike Kurtz of Mike's Hot Honey, their 15th year anniversary. What a likable dude. He's just like the best. It's such an interesting story. I know that that's like old news, like Hot Honey, but I also think the ubiquity it's achieved is like really impressive, and you even see it in North Carolina now.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you one out there one, because that's a little too, like, people will be like, "Oh, that's so passe," which is fine. I went to the NRA show, which is, should always specify, is the National Restaurant Association show
Yes.
in Chicago in May. And some of the work I did with QSR and FSR was with Bush's Beans. Like I would write articles about beans. And this woman, Lisa, I don't know how to say her last name, but it's like Lisa Patak or something. And it's PTAK. So I don't know how to say it. But she emailed me and was like, "Would you come stop by the booth?" And I was like, "You know what? I've always loved Bush's. Yes, I'll come say hi to you all. But I don't really know that there'll be a pizza tie." And she was like, "Oh." So she sat me down with like a bean expert. This woman had literally gotten a PhD in beans, and she was like suggesting all these different ways that you could use beans on a pizza. And Brian Hernandez, who runs the US Pizza team, is also associate editor at PMQ. He's a great dude. He that's kind of his block. Like his beat is like unusual ingredients on pizza. He's done like articles on like edible flowers, and I'm gonna forget the other ones right now, but like some really interesting, thought provoking stuff. Oh, he's done anchovies, pineapple. I know there's a common, but just like sort of like sticking up for them. Like, here's how you could use them in interesting ways. And I set him up with her, and I was like, "You should totally write a story about beans." And like one thing that kind of blew my mind was people using white beans as like a sauce, like actually, like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like emulsifying them and making them like almost a liquid spread, and using that instead of tomato sauce. And I was like, I bet that wouldn't suck, to be honest.
Yeah. I appreciate when brands try to figure out creative ways to incorporate themselves into these conversations. So
I
I
know,
guess
I know.
it's good PR for them too.
Totally. It takes, yeah, it's not easy, but they do it.
Yeah. I know you talk a lot with operators, independent operators, trying to break through. And because we cover this on Pizza Club about the constant barrage of the bigger names in the pizza space, the bigger chains really kind of dominating the marketing world because they have like such big budgets and they're able to put a lot of stuff out there. And independent small pizzerias, they're kind of on their own, right? They got to make it work with the small resources and tight margins. Curious, and just talking to pizzerias about social media and marketing themselves, like, what have you seen as kind of creative or interesting things that people are doing, kind of smart and scrappy way of putting stuff together?
I am deeply envious of everything Alex Coons does on Instagram. He's just hysterical. Like, I watch literally every reel that dude does. I tell him all the time, like, his stuff brings me a lot of joy. I'm thinking of one where he's like a cop and comes in and says his prices are illegal, and he's like talking back and forth with himself. A time he was dancing to Creed in the San Francisco streets, and I'm like, hell yes. And he's awesome. And also, obviously, Coons like does a lot of, for lack of a better term, like B2B stuff in terms of like talking with operators about like the grind, and I think that's really cool. I don't know if that translates to sales for his pizzeria. I'll shout out one other person in that area in LA, Emil Chiaberri of Burattino Brick Oven Pizza. He was like a highly successful guy who he did like a women's supplement business or something, and he sold it for a lot of money, I think. And he basically could have retired, but he was like messing around south of LA. I'm going to forget the Palace, but you can look it up where the original Burattino is. So he bought the pizzeria because it was failing, and he started like making a few changes, and his wife was doing the books, I guess, and his wife was like, hey, like, are we gonna just lose money on this pizzeria, because I got to do the taxes and like we're not doing well. And he was like, okay, I'll take it seriously. So he started, and he had a lot of experience in the women's supplement business. I know this sounds crazy, but creating desire for the product via radio ads and like trying to grab somebody's attention quickly. And so he'd never been on Instagram in his life, apparently. And he like started an Instagram account. He now has, I think it's 1.3 million followers on Instagram, like 7 years later or something. And the thing that blew my mind that he told me about, and we actually did a webinar about this, it was really well attended back in May. You can still watch it, it's up on our site. But he was saying basically he was studying what worked, and he was trying to like do crazy stuff, just put crazy ingredients, create controversy, you know, all this stuff. And what he started to find was his best videos were pepperoni pizza and videos where you could hear the crunch of the pizza, whether it was cutting it or somebody biting into it. And literally, if you look at his Instagram, it's like 95% just like pepperoni or a pizza with crunch. And he doesn't really stray from that. And he just hammered like 10 posts a day of just that. And people love it. And his pizzeria is like deeply successful. He has like 4 of them now. One's in Toronto. He was just like, let's just try a franchise in Toronto. Maybe that will work. So anyway, those are some things that come to mind.
It's great. What I'm trying to always figure out or hear from pizzerias is what's working for them. How do you stand out? And I know those are some good examples of just like people that are mixing it up. And I think to your point about, finding something that works, right? It sounds like he was methodical in figuring out that ASMR crunch videos and pepperoni is like what works on social, right?
Yes.
And like, I even know for Pizza Club, we post a lot of these kinds of conversations and people love them, but you post some video of somebody slicing a pizza and like people go crazy. You have to kind of know the platforms, right? And Instagram, I know, is a big platform for a lot of pizzerias and pizza people. And you kind of got to know what works there. So
100%. I think just to sort of underline what you said, and sort of I said, I'd shout out Bruce Irving again. He's not afraid to repost content. And I think sometimes we're really afraid of, oh God, is somebody going to like call out that like I posted this last week or posted something very similar? And I think what I've learned from both of them, granted they do very different things, is don't be afraid to just keep posting what works. And obviously don't make it the same picture every time or the same video or the same words, but people engage with what works. So just keep doing what works. Don't be afraid.
yeah, I think that's good advice. There's no shame in repurposing what you've already done. Not everybody's going back through your feed and swiping through.
In fact,
It's
nobody,
new to
only
them.
weirdos like us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. I like to talk about some innovations that you've seen because I know you've written about some technology side
Yeah.
things in the pizza space. What are you seeing out there making things easier for pizzerias and people in the pizza biz that you like?
It's a really good question. I would say like a year ago, Rick and I started having conversation again. Rick Heinem, the editor-in-chief of PMQ. Literally, the question was, where are all the robots? It felt like for forever, we've been promised this robotic future where like they're flipping burgers. I did 2 interviews within like the same week by chance. One was with a franchisee at a place called Zorba's on the Lake. It's in Minnesota. It's a small town, and it's really busy during the summer. It's like a summer home on a lake situation, and he gets slammed for 3-4 months, however long summer lasts in Minnesota. Maybe it's more like a month. But no, I mean, during peak season, it's really busy. Then the winter quiets down, but they're still open for the locals. He had a lot of success with the X Robotics Cube. I honestly, people can Google it, but it's this machine that just sauces and tops a pizza and cooks it. And it can really only do like cheese and pepperoni, maybe sausage. Don't sue me, X Robotics, if I'm getting this wrong. But he was really high on the machine, and he explained he'd returned his ROI in like 16 months or whatever. He loved the thing. It was helping him grow his business. What he really liked about it was during the busy season, it helped supplement labor. During the quiet season, just like one person could work back there and just be like doing drinks and like turning out pies. And so I thought that was really interesting. But then I talked to this guy who really like turned everything on its head for me. He's the CEO of a company called Apatronics, and they're working with Donato's. They're literally opening this month a location at the Columbus airport with Donato's that's a fully robotic, it's the size, picture of a food truck. It's just like in the airport, and there's nobody in there. There's no humans in it. And you punch in, and it turns out a Donato's pizza in like 3 minutes or something like that. I'm getting the time wrong, but it's quick. And he was in the business. Labor was really hard to come by. And so he was looking for things like the X robotics system. And when he looked at the machines, he was like, this isn't solving a problem I have. It's not really replacing people. It's supplementing labor. I want to replace people. And that sounds really strange. And I think for independent pizzerias, it's like, what? This probably doesn't apply to them. But that was exactly the takeaway I had from the story, was he was basically saying, to move the economic model, let's do basically a robotic structure that can sit in a place where you wouldn't otherwise have a pizzeria. So you can grow your brand this way without adding labor, right? So you can sell a pizza at 3 a.m. without having anybody there because the machine's there. And it made me realize that I think automation is going to look really different for independents and chains. Like maybe that's super obvious, but I do think these supplemental things, whether it's a machine that could fully cook a pizza or it just sauces it or it churns out dough balls, there's a lot of those that are really impressive. And I think those are the types of things that you really will see people start to adopt. I think labor keeps going up. It's become a little bit easier to find good employees, in the last 3 years, but it's still really a really big challenge that they deal with on an everyday basis. And I think those solutions are going to get cheaper and cheaper, and it's going to be harder not to want to acquire those, not really to replace people, but to supplement who you already have in house, basically.
Right. I think it's also speeding up certain processes versus taking over complete automation, which is a thing too. And like you said, and there are brands that can try to experiment with having a standalone location that operates itself, and that's great. But I think even just in the kitchen, like you said, dealing with dough balls or saucing or cutting or whatever. So it's interesting to hear your perspective on what's out there. I'm curious too with loyalty for customers. I don't know if you've talked much about this with some of the pizzerias and getting returning customers. We talked a little bit about social media and marketing. A lot of these pizzerias, they're building a business in a community and they're being involved in their community, but also create loyalty amongst their neighbors. Have you seen any pizzerias that have been doing outstanding things in their community, or even just figuring out ways to create loyalty amongst their customer base and in their neighborhood, in their local towns?
Where my mind goes with that, again, this might be sidestepping the question a little bit, but I think it's relevant and I think it's important. Recently wrote a story. I talked with Lauren Paddleford, who's the chief revenue officer at Slice. Slice is a really interesting company for PMQ in that like their mission is basically our mission in terms of helping independent pizzerias sell more pizza. And listen, this is not sponsored content. I appreciate what Slice is trying to do. But one of the things Lauren and I talked about was, I believe that the number he gave me, and I wrote a story about it, was that 35% of independent pizzerias don't have a website. And a lot of the time you ask them and they say, no, I do have a website. I'm on Uber Eats or I'm on DoorDash, And as Lauren would say, oh no, like what I think people don't understand is you don't own your listing on Uber Eats. You don't own your listing on DoorDash. You have to have a website. And the reason I bring this up as it pertains to loyalty is that online ordering is just the best way to build loyalty. And it's the best way to build check sizes. I mean, these systems that you enlist, whether it's Slice or whether it's another platform, are really good at offering more things, And it's if you can click a button, as we've seen in virtually every other industry. I mean, Lauren's telling me check sizes double when people order online. And also it really helps when you're trying to retain customers to give them just the most convenient possible way to order. And also then you have that connection with them via their email, their phone number, the things that you've given them. Now you're really equipped with these things that are vital to marketing. I think, there's a parallel that I'll draw between pizzerias and something we've had to deal with in media, which is that Google, the SEO spigot got turned off. I don't know how many people know this, but like a year or two ago, Google, when they started doing the AI thing, I don't know how many people have made this connection, but like the reason that they did that was because they were sick of just sending traffic to other people. They were like, no, we want to keep you on Google. We want the hit. We want you to see just the ads and not scroll down and go see the actual people who gave us the information that we're stealing. But there's a relationship there in that it's really important for media publications to have people's email addresses to be able to reach out to them to say, here's our content. Do you want to read it? Here's an event that we're doing in Atlanta in September, Pizza Power Forum. Do you want to come? Things like that. Just a little drop there.
I love it. I love it.
But I see a relationship between those two things. You have to own your data. You have to own the relationship with the customer, because you just never know when Uber Eats is going to go out of business or kick you off the platform or downgrade you listing wise because you're not doing enough business or whatever,
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. And I know that it's a scary stat that you threw out there about how little ownership people have. But the thing is, this is your business, right? You need to be the person communicating with your customer. And I think you're renting space on the social platforms too, right? Like this isn't you don't own it. You don't own any of that stuff. So figure out a way to go directly to your customers, and that's it, because they come to your shop, right, to buy the pizza. So you're seeing them, or if they're getting delivery, figure out a way to be part of their worlds.
And Michael, that's such an important point too. Like if somebody orders from your pizzeria 5, 6, 7 times off of DoorDash, they clearly love your pizzeria. You have to figure out how to convert them to your first party channels. Like it, because everybody knows this. You're taking a huge hit on the sale based on the commission and the fees and everything that DoorDash or Uber Eats is going to take from you. If that person's logging on to DoorDash once a week to order your pizza, that's crazy. Like you have to find a way. Just slip something in their bag, anything that you can think of to be like, hey, I'll give you one free pizza if you give me your email address so that you can just order through me next time, because let's cut out the middleman. You're paying too much, I'm losing money. Let's make this work,
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to talk a little bit about the aspiring pizza owner, all right? Because I know there's a lot of people that probably read your magazine or talk to you that are kind of trying to get into the business and get started. I know from Pizza Club, we've seen a lot of pop-up people who started at home during the pandemic, and then they started doing pop-ups, and then a lot of them are now opening shops. We're seeing this continuation, right? But for those starting out, what are some of the mistakes or things that people really need to look out? Curious if anything comes to mind that you're like, wow, this is something I should share.
Dude, like when I say like 5 things just came to my mind. Yeah, it's a subject we've written about extensively. The pop-up to brick and mortar journey. It's literally an article I did for the print magazine. I believe it came out in the April edition. Talked to Miriam Wiskin from
Yes,
Yuns of PDX. She was a pop-up for a very long time. I also talked to a couple other people, Bucky's Pizzeria in New Jersey, and then my guy down here, Peyton Smith at Mission Pizza Napolitana. One of the things Peyton said that I thought was a really good point was, I think starting with pop-up makes so much sense these days. You get to learn, number one, if you like making pizza for a living. Making it for your friends and stuff is cool. When you're having to make 30 pizzas in an hour or whatever it is, you might feel very differently about doing that when it goes from a hobby or a passion project to a job. I think we've all experienced that. There are things that you love doing that you wouldn't want to do for a living. So I think finding out, like, the overhead cost of a pop-up is just, it's nothing, and you get to go to a place, whether it's a farmer's market or a festival or whatever. There's foot traffic. There's guaranteed foot traffic. There's people who are going to come by. They're probably going to buy your pizza. Maybe you're not going to make a ton of money, but you're going to find out if it works, if people like the product, what they don't like about it, price point, whether you like doing it, like all of these things. And so I think there's no shame in that. In fact, I think, I would even recommend it in some ways. Also spoke to Cascadia Pizza Company. They're out of Washington State. They started with a food truck, and one of the things that kind of blew my mind about their brand is they're now growing, they're franchising, and they're not requiring it, but they're strongly recommending that every franchisee have both their brick and mortar space and a food truck. And the reason that they really like that is they find with the food truck, they can go into certain neighborhoods and find out, do people like our pizza here? Do they like our product? They said they found there's places that they thought were just blocks. Of course they're going to like our pizza, and they found out differently. And then there's places that they're like, I don't know about this town. And like everyone loved it. And they put a pizzeria in there. And suddenly you already have the name recognition. You've already built up that people know you and you have a fan base suddenly. So, and then the only other thing I'll say, Michael, on that subject is we have a newsletter. Again, another shameless plug for a PMQ product, but we have a newsletter comes out once a week on Tuesdays. We implemented it within the last 2 years. It's called Startup Shops. And it's just stories that might interest people who are either just starting out, thinking about starting out, or just sort of have a fledgling pizzeria business. All of the content is meant to serve that audience. So I think that that's an exciting thing that we do that people should check out if they don't already.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely subscribe to that if you're not already. And I think, yes, it's a really interesting part of the journey for those pizza makers. Like Miriam was part of Pizza Club a lot when she was in New York. I'm super excited for her with the Yums of PDX. She grinded it out. And a lot of these pizza makers, they do these pop-ups. It's hard work, but it really does help test things and get you feedback. Really maybe test the waters before you jump in. And we've also seen a lot of pizza makers, and maybe you've seen this too, where they have a line out the door on day one because they've done the work,
Yeah.
and that's really cool. Like, what businesses can open with a line out the door on the first day, other than the fact that the neighborhood's just excited that they're there? But these are people that were customers, and now they're coming because they want to support. So I think it's a great way to test market. I don't know if we'll see as much of that now in today's climate, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe it continues. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
so.
I don't know either. And yeah, Miriam's an absolute badass. I've been interviewed a couple times. I felt very lucky. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's great. We love Miriam. So, kind of talking about just switching gears to talk a little bit about PMQ. I'm sure you get contacted all the time by people that have stories they want to tell you, or they want to just be in the magazine or online or whatever. And they want to talk to Charlie at PMQ. So, Charlie, if you had advice to people that are looking to be featured from your vantage point, what is an interesting story for PMQ?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is we sometimes get story pitches for people who specifically say, like, I'm trying to sell more pizza. And it's like, PMQ is not the place to do that. we're a B2B magazine. You know what I mean? We're not targeting consumers. Not a lot of consumers read our magazine. So, we can't help you with that. But if you read PMQ, maybe you could sell more pizza. But I think the thing I would focus on there is we get a lot of pitches that tell us rather than show us. They say we use the finest ingredients. They say we're active in the community. I don't know what that means. You have your own understanding of what that means, but tell me, like, what does it look like? Even if it's like we sponsor little league teams. I know a lot of pizzerias do that, but like, that's interesting. Some of the best story pitches I've ever gotten are just really specific. They know who they are. They've done the work of what makes my pizzeria special. They've thought about it a lot. There was a pizzeria in small town Ohio, gonna forget the name, that pitched me on how they have a drive-through window. They don't do a lot of discounting, but they actually do direct mail for their marketing. They actually mail to very specific zip codes, just flyers, and that's how they get their most traffic, which I think most people would overlook these days. And they're in a town where they're the only independent pizzeria, and there's 4 chains, and so they've had to do a lot of work. The guy who runs it, Kerry Steed, he identifies himself as the pizza man of his town, and he's not afraid to have those conversations with people in public. And he realized at an early age, his grandparents and his parents above him ran pizzerias before. They were actually franchisees of a small chain, but he changed it into an independent pizzeria. It's called Generations Pizzeria. Finally thought of it. Shout out Kerry. And he wears it on his sleeve. He wears the brand on his sleeve, and he recognizes that, like, it's not a 9 to 5. You don't punch out. When you're going to events on the weekends, you're making those connections with people. You're forging actual connections. I love pizzerias that focus on, actually, a Papa Murphy's franchisee. I know that won't be super popular with the indie pizza crowd, but I love the principle of this. He said one of the things they did to turn around a store was he went in there and he was like, we're going to learn 3 people's names today. And it was just like, learn your customers' names. Just learn who they are, what makes them tick. Just be friendly. That's really all it takes on some level.
I love it. It's great insight too. If you had to give advice to a pizzeria owner or someone in the business, is there a common mistake that you see a lot of people make that you wish that they didn't do?
I'll defer to a person who's become a good buddy of mine, Salvatore Reina, Francesca Pizza and Pasta in Northern New Jersey. Just a great guy. And he always told me he bought a pizzeria in his mid-20s with help from his brother. And he always says it shouldn't have worked out. Like, he didn't know what he didn't know. And it was almost like the lack of fear helped him get through the early times. But he said when he finally started taking his numbers seriously, when he finally started knowing exactly how much each meatball cost him, exactly how much each piece of pepperoni he's putting on a pizza cost him, is the day that his business went from like, oh yeah, I'm making some money, to like, okay, I'm making some money and we could expand. It's taking that very seriously from day one. And listen, your pizzeria might lose money the first couple of years, but you need to know how much money it's losing. You need to know like what your break even is. You need to know all of these things to the letter. And maybe you need to hire somebody. Maybe you're not a numbers person. Maybe you just like making pizza. Figure out how to outsource those things. And then the second thing I'd say, Michael, and I've said this to you before, is people have to learn how to delegate. There's this old school pizzeria mentality of like, I'm going to work 80 to 100 hours a week. I'm going to sacrifice a lot of vacation time and family time to make this business run. And I think that's cool. And if that's you, that's you. But I think for a lot of people, that leads to burnout. And early on, you might have to do that to get it off the ground where you're making money. You can actually pay somebody to do your job. But I think the only way to truly grow your business, Sal Reyna, who I just talked to, he plays golf like twice a week now during the week, and he can do that because he has a really good staff in place and they make plenty of money. And he's working on the business from a different level. He's at home a lot now. He's looking at different things. He's marketing. He's making connections to the community, which he can do from his desk a lot of the of time. I think people have to learn that skill if they don't want to get burned out.
The great points. I mean, yeah, you have to know your numbers. You have to know your costs. It's foolish to not have that information in front of you, because how do you make decisions about how to grow your business? And also, I think for expansion and moving forward, it's really hard to think about how do you grow if you are working in the business all the time and you can't take a step back from it and play golf. And like,
Yeah.
right? And think about the business, right? And
Golf's
not
very
just,
important. No, yeah.
yeah. I mean, listen, maybe that's the moral of the story. Play more golf. That's it. Um, Charlie, this has been a lot of fun. I could talk to you for another hour, but
Yeah.
I know we gotta get going here. So tell me, how can people connect with PMQ Magazine and
Yeah.
you, and just what's some ways to follow you guys?
Yeah, totally. So, PMQ.com, click the subscribe button, subscribe to the print magazine, our newsletters, whatever you want to do. I run a podcast that Michael has been on. So we're doing a home and home here, if you will. And you can find that peel at PMQ. I'm Charlie Pogacar on Instagram. I have like 300 followers. I'm not very useful to you unless you want to DM me. So please DM me. I also want to say, I hope I didn't make people feel like they have to come up with like an incredible story pitch to reach out to us if you have an interesting story, because I'll talk to most people. I really, really like talking to people. That's what I do all day. And you probably do have a story, even if you don't know it. So just feel free to drop me a DM. I love chatting pizza. I love hearing people's stories, and I love getting them some PR through our channels. So I would say that those are the best ways to connect with us.
Awesome. Charlie, again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being part of Pizza Club and stopping by here. And of course, we hope you'll come back and hang out with us again.
Anytime. Literally anytime.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been Pizza Industry Convos, part of the Pizza Club Network. Please like, rate, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also follow us on Instagram, I Need Pizza Club. And I'll see you again soon for another episode of Pizza Industry Convos. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.